I was going to call this address, "Sometimes We Need a Whack on the Side of the Head," but I thought that might be a bit violent for some people, and seeing it would be out in front of the church for the week on the notice board, I thought I changed my mind anyway. But it's based upon the idea that there are times in life when we do need a whack on the side of the head, figuratively speaking. Although, when I was in Year 10 at Ballarat High School, we had an annual cricket match with Geelong High. We travelled down to Geelong by steam train in those days, and we went through the tunnel in South Geelong before getting off the train in the station at South Geelong. I was sitting opposite one of the staff members who was accompanying us on the trip. As the train entered the tunnel, darkness fell in the compartment, and one of the students threw a glass of water over the staff member. And without any discussion as to who may have done such a deed, he leant across the compartment and gave me a whack on the side of the head, believing that I was the culprit. Well, I wasn't, but it was one of those experiences that you always remember from your school days. You wouldn't get away with it today, would you? The 3M company encourages its employees to have bright ideas. The company allows its researchers to spend 15% of their time on any project that interests them. A number of years ago, a scientist in 3M's commercial office took advantage of his 15% creative time. His name was Arthur Fry, and he came up with an idea for one of 3M's best-selling products. Every Sunday morning, he sang in his local church choir, and he had to deal with a small irritation. He would mark his pages in the hymn book with small bits of paper, and invariably, as he opened the pages, many of those pieces of paper would fall to the floor of the church. As he was thinking about this irritation, an idea grasped him. He remembered an adhesive developed by a colleague that everyone thought was a failure because it didn't stick very well. He said, "I coated the adhesive on a simple piece of paper, and I found that it was not only a good bookmark, but it was great for writing notes on. It will stay in place as long as you want it to, and then you can remove it without doing any damage." The resulting product, of course, was Post-it, which has become one of 3M's most successful office products. As George Ballas drove his car through the car wash, he watched the string of the brushes surround his car and wipe away the grime on it. His mind relaxed and turned to all the gardening jobs that he had to do when he got home. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He looked again at the brushes in the car wash and watched as they straightened out when they revolved at high speed, and yet they were flexible enough to reach every nook and cranny of the car. And he said to himself, "Why not use a nylon cord whirling at high speed to trim the grass and weeds around my garden and trees?" And the whippersnipper was born. His first one was homemade, and when he decided to go commercial, the first 20 manufacturers he approached turned him down. "Cut grass with a nylon string," they said. "You must be crazy." And in 1971, he invested his own money into this company, the Weed Eater Incorporated, and it grew into a multi-million-dollar company. You may never know where the inspiration of a new idea may come from. L. Frank Baum, author of The Wizard of Oz, had finished writing the outline of the story, but hadn't come up with the name of the enchanted land where Dorothy, the Tin Man, Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion sought to help sought the help of the wizard. And as he gathered up his files from his desk, his eyes fell on a drawer in the corner of his office, and it had the letters O to Z, Oz. And that's where he got the idea from. Why is it that we don't think of something different more often? Probably the first reason is we seldom need to be creative in what we do every day. I don't need to be creative when I'm driving along the freeway, or riding in a lift, or standing in the queue at Woolworths supermarket checkout. We're all creatures of habit when it comes to the demands of daily living. And for most of those activities, our routines are just indispensable, and without them our lives would be chaos. If we got up this morning and contemplated the bristles on our toothbrush, or questioned the meaning of toast, we probably wouldn't make it to the day's activities or to work. And second, for most of us, our education system has squashed our creativity, and we've been taught to think that the best ideas are in someone else's head. There are times, however, when we need to be creative and open to new ideas. And when this happens, our belief systems may prevent us from engaging in creative thinking. And the third reason why we don't think something different more often is that we have certain attitudes that lock us into the status quo and keep us thinking more of the same. We could call these attitudes mental locks. It is difficult to get your creative juices flowing if you're always being practical, following rules, afraid to make mistakes. And there are a number of mental locks that we use, looking for the right answer. That's not logical. Let's follow the rules. Be practical. Play is frivolous and a waste of time. That's not my area of knowledge. Avoid ambiguity. Don't be foolish. To err is wrong, and I'm not creative. There's some of the mental locks that we often use. Knowledge, of course, is the stuff from which new ideas are made. However, knowledge alone won't make a person creative. I think we've all met people who knew lots of facts and nothing creative happened. Their knowledge just sat in their heads because they didn't think about what they knew in new ways. The real key to being creative lies in what you do with your knowledge. A good example of this, of course, and many of you would know this, was Johann Gutenberg. What Gutenberg did was to combine two previously unconnected ideas: the wine press and the coin punch. The purpose of the coin punch was to leave an image on a small area such as a gold coin. And the function of the wine press was, and still is, to apply force over a large area to squeeze the juice out of grapes. So Gutenberg, perhaps after he'd drunk a goblet or two of the wine, playfully asked himself, what if I took a bunch of these coin punches and put them under the force of the wine press so that they left an image on the paper? And as we all know, the resulting combination was the printing press and movable type, which was one of the greatest inventions, perhaps along with the computer, that we know. Many years ago, I had a friend who was program director at the Australian Institute of Management, and he invited me to one of the seminars he was conducting with a management consultant from the United States. His name was Joel Weldon, and Joel lived in Scottsdale, Arizona. And Joel's key point in his presentation was this: you look at what other people are doing in the same things as everybody else is doing, and then you do something different. And this is what he had. Everybody in business has a business card. So he looked at all of that and thought, no, I'm going to do something different. So he had these small cans produced. And on the cans were printed the words, "Success comes in cans, not in cannots." Everyone he met, instead of presenting them with a business card, he gave them a can. You see, look at what everybody else is doing and then do something different. There's the story of the Buddhist teacher who invited one of his students to his house for afternoon tea. And they talked for a bit, and then came the time to serve the tea. The teacher poured some into the student's cup. Even after the cup was full, he continued to pour. The cup overflowed and tea spilled out onto the floor. And finally the student said, "Master, you must stop pouring. The cup is overflowing. The tea is not going into the cup." And the teacher replied, "That's very observant of you. The same is true with you. If you are to receive my teachings, you must first empty out what you have in your mental cup. And sometimes we have to unlearn what we know." In our reading from Genesis 28, we have this story of Jacob and the ladder. This is also a story of Jacob finding a new understanding of the divine presence in his life. Jacob was a man on the run, and some of us, of course, run from our past, trying to escape guilt, regret, failures, or disappointments. And some of us, we try to get away from the pain, the losses, and the brokenness of our lives. Other times we're running towards the future. Sometimes it is a search for something or someone new, a new job or career, a new relationship. And we may think that what we're looking for is out there in the future somewhere, if we can just get there. But life on the run keeps us living on that horizontal axis. Reality and life are limited to the physical universe, time, space, matter, and energy. And we miss that vertical axis, the transcendent aspects of life. Life on the run usually takes us symbolically to a certain place, somewhere between Beersheba and Haran in our story. But this isn't a geographical location, but it's a spiritual orientation. Jacob had left Beersheba, the people and places that were familiar to him, and he's not yet in Haran, the new place. He is neither here nor there. And this is the place, spiritually speaking, where we are most vulnerable and open to seeing and hearing the divine presence in our lives in new ways. And so it is night time and the sun has set. It is a place of emptiness for Jacob, filled with presence and mystery. Enlightenment is not about what you know, but who you know, trust and follow. And this is a hard place for Jacob, full of stones and rocks. And yet it is also a place of grace. And when the sun has set and the darkness takes over you, and you can no longer go on, you can only stop and lie down. And the darkness teaches us that we are no longer in control of our own destiny. The vertical axis of God's life, Jacob's ladder, intersects the horizontal axis of our life. And that point of intersection is always an awesome place, as Jacob says. He calls the place Beth-El, In Hebrew, Beth is house or place, and El is the shortened version of the name of God, Elohim. So El is always used to reference God. So Jacob was conscious that his life was on the run. He was in a place which he had left behind, but as yet had not reached. His head rested on a cold, hard stone, and sleep eventually came to him. And with the unleashing of his subconscious in a dream, there appeared a ladder that went to heaven. Of course, the ladder was not a physical ladder. It was a ladder that was within him. It was not a vision, but a dream. And he was able to say on awakening, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." Here was a new idea that inspired Jacob's life. So may we, in our lives, discover the ladder of connection from the horizontal to the vertical in the divine presence. Amen.